we're not scary. A lot of people feel like if you're getting a call from HR, then you're out the door. I have to really help people understand sometimes that our job is to help you. You know, if you do have an HR person in your organization that is that kind of scary, frightful person, they might not be the right one in the role.
Welcome to another episode of Relocation Leader. I'm your host, Zac Turbes, and today we have a very special guest. We have Dan Vaughn, our very own HR manager at NEI Global Relocation. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Zach. Good to be here.
So, Dan, tell us a little bit about yourself for those who don't know you yet.
Yeah, I'm Dan Vaughn. I've been in HR for over 10 years. It was one of those situations where you don't know what you want to do after college and you just start a job somewhere. And I had someone come up to me about 6 months into my new role as a property research analyst. It was, I don't even remember what that job was back then, but and then I started to they're like, you'd be great at HR, and I was like, sure, I'll give it a shot. And then here I am.
What did they see in you?
Well, yeah. Well, what did they ever see in me? But it was interesting because when I was in this job, it was you're producing widgets essentially every day. And but I worked really closely with the people that I was with, and there was about 12 of us on a team, and I would get the team together to go out for happy hour or organize food days or be kind of an advocate for what the things that we wanted with the team. And it just so happened an HR leader was walking by one of our weekly huddle meetings and heard me doing all the things that I do. And she was like, do you want to be in HR? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. I guess. I don't know. I didn't really know what it meant for me back then, but started doing recruiting and some admin work and just kind of kept growing and growing and growing.
How do you like it?
I do like it a lot. It's a very satisfying job when you know that you're helping people every day. I'm not going to say it's an easy job, but it is satisfying.
You said you had a comedy career.
Yeah.
Is that before or after your HR career?
It was actually during. So I was probably a year, maybe 2 years into my HR career. And I had a buddy that was doing stand-up comedy. And then I also met somebody in my office that did stand-up. So I was like, well, if these people can do it, I can do it, right? And it took me about 6 or 7 months of just bombing on stage before I got like my first laugh. And I ended up doing comedy for about 5 years, but it got to that point where you had to either choose comedy or your career. Because I was, sometimes open mics don't start till 9 o'clock. You might not get home till 2 a.m. And when I was younger, I could just, have a Red Bull and be fine the next day. But as you get older, it doesn't really work that well. So I decided that maybe take a step away from the comedy and focus on the career. And not that I don't miss it, but I don't think anyone's really missing me.
What about comedy and HR manager are surprisingly similar?
You get a lot of blank stares when you're talking to people. And no, I'd say that honestly, one of the things that did help me out quite a bit, and you and I were talking about this previously, but just learning how to talk to people, learning how to talk in front of people, is a big thing in both HR and in comedy. And you can force yourself to do it, and you'll come out better for it. Like every time you try something new, you may not be great. You may not be great after 6 months, but at least you're trying it and you're doing it, and it's getting you out of your comfort zone. And sometimes with HR, you have to get out of, the comfort zone of, well, this is black and white, so it has to be this way. Really, there's a lot of gray area. And so you have to be ready on your guard, kind of like with stand up, someone might be heckling you. You have to be okay, I'm going to deflect that somewhere else because this is what we're talking about right now. And so, yeah, there's a lot of similarities of just having to be ready and on your toes at any moment. And I mean, just yesterday, I had an employee relation issue pop up in the middle of the day, no warning. I had to stop what I was doing and take care of it. I had other things I was trying to get done, and
Listen, I didn't want to come in either.
It's surprising that, the correlations are there.
Kind of more serious. Can you share your leadership philosophy and how it's evolved over your career?
Yeah. So really, my main goal with leadership is to provide the tools and resources needed to the people that I'm leading. And that could be, hey, I need some help with this project I'm working on. It could be, I'm not quite sure. I've never handled this situation before. Or sometimes just, I need some time off. Can you help me with that? So if I feel that if I'm providing my team or any team I'm supporting with the ability to do their job and do it well, then everything else is going to fall into place. Obviously there's minutia that goes into that and things that need to happen outside. But if that core philosophy is being met, then I feel that the team is going to be successful.
Kind of always, it reminds me a little bit of like, there's different types of leaders,
Yeah.
like, Randy's a totally different leader than you, partly because of the functions and then partly because of personality. So
Sure.
How much of it is like, being in HR, making sure we call it like being in the right seat,
Yeah.
like what does that mean to an organization? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, being in the right seat is really it's huge, I feel, because if you don't have the right people in the right seats doing the right things, then there's going to be a gap in what needs to be covered or has the ability to do things. So you're absolutely right when you are hiring for people or you're assessing your team, trying to figure out who's in the right spots and who's doing things that are fulfilling that role is drastically important. And that doesn't mean that people can't grow and excel out of that role. I think that happens quite often. That's one of the things I like about NEI is that we promote that there's growth opportunities. But you have to look at it from time to time and see, are there still the right people in the right roles going forward?
How do you sort of help managers determine whether the person is just like in the wrong seat, but they're like quality and should be, moved around versus like, this is probably not a good fit for the organization?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's always a case by case basis. You can't ever look at anything in black and white. But there's a lot of things that go into it. A lot of it might be, first of all, maybe if they have metrics you can look at and see, okay, they're obviously not meeting this part of their criteria. So we may have to do something about that. But a lot of it can be, okay, what is their skill set? What are they doing currently that makes them applicable for the job, and are they meeting all their job requirements? That's a huge part of having good job descriptions set up, because if the job descriptions aren't accurate and you're having them do things outside of their job description, then how can we say that they're in the right seat if they don't even know themselves? So being prepared in that aspect, I think, is really huge on if they're in the right seat, in the right role. And then also a lot of it comes with coaching. If you know that somebody gets it, wants it, has the capacity to do it, but maybe just isn't there at the time, there's a lot of tools and resources that HR can help provide and coaching to make sure that those people get the fair opportunity to do their role.
You got any like funny leadership stories in your position?
Well, I will say one thing that happens more often than I think it should, and I'm always excited when it does happen, is when somebody is struggling in the role, but management has the foresight to get HR involved, and we do turn it around. So, I've had times where managers come and tell me that, I think we got to let this person go. They're just not getting it. They're just not meeting their metrics. And, we'll jump in and we'll say, okay, well, let's look at this. Let's see like what they need to do, what has to happen for them to be able to make everything align the way that it should. And sometimes that might be a formal conversation or a memo that we have to send out to them. But once they realize that, hey, maybe my job's on the line here, they do shape up instead of shipping out a lot of the times. So that's a really great feeling when you can avoid having to terminate somebody because we took the time to invest in that person.
So if we're looking at recruiting more broadly, is there are HR professionals, thinking that it's like talent is more scarce, or is there sort of an overabundance of talent currently? Is it very industry specific? Kind of like what's your take?
Yeah, I'd say that it's really kind of industry specific at times. Like for us at NEI, we have a very specific industry, and there's not a lot of people out there that can just go out and say, oh, I've got relocation experience, I'll jump over here. I mean, there's some overlap, but there's not a whole lot. The thing that you find as a big challenge with that recruiting is, there's a lot of people with talent, but there's a lot of people that have a very specific pay that they're looking for as well. So while we might be hiring for a new entry level position that is something that, coming fresh out of college, you might think would be $18, $19, $20 an hour would be all right. Some people feel like they still want $25, $26, $27 an hour, which is their prerogative if they feel that's what their time and effort is worth. But sometimes you have to realize that you're starting in a new organization or a new type of industry, and that you may need to kind of step back on your salary requirements.
You like quotes?
I do like quotes.
I got a quote game here for you. So,
I'm not good at guessing quotes, but I do like them.
I think this is going to be fun. This is like the funnest one I came up with so far, I think. So I'm going to read a quote. You give me your initial thought on it, and then you tell me who you think said it. Okay. All right. So first quote. In most cases, being a good boss means hiring talented people and then getting out of their way.
Okay. I do like that one. Because, you want to make sure. Why would you hire that person if you didn't feel like they're going to be capable of doing the best job? You're not going to hire Joe Schmo off the street. You want to hire someone that you feel comfortable with. So that sounds good.
I wonder if there's anyone named Joe Schmo who's just excellent at their job.
or even worse, it's just like it's Steve Schmo. It's like really close to Joe Schmo, but he just can't really make it work. Honestly, if hiring talented people, getting out of their way. I know it's probably wrong, but like Warren Buffett.
It's Tina Fey.
Oh, okay. All right.
Second one. I'll always choose a lazy person to do a hard job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it.
I like the quote because it shows that there's efficiencies to be had. And the term lazy, I guess, is subjective because for me, I consider myself a lazy person. Maybe not at work, but I like to just sit around and listen to music and play music and just do things.
Mellow.
Yeah, I'm a pretty chill guy.
Yeah.
I think that just kind of goes to show that person is the exact opposite of lazy. They're innovative and they see things that other people aren't, and they bring new things to the table.
Yeah, they're just kind of always asking the question, can this be done a little bit easier?
Yeah.
Who do you think said it?
Jeez. I don't know. Captain America. Let's go back to MCU.
It was Bill Gates.
Bill Gates. Okay. Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, I almost dismissed I almost dismissed the quote because I was like, who even has lazy people around their organization? Aren't they all gone? Yeah. But then once he said, I'm like, oh, okay, well.
He knows a little bit about something. Yeah.
All right. When you're doing your recruiting, what are the indicators that you may need to look outside, your local area, more regionally, nationally, internationally? What's the criteria that you the grid that you use to assess that?
Yeah, part of the intake information that we pull out of the manager is to understand what the geological situation might be. So, geographical situation. So we'll first determine, hey, is this going to be a job that's on site? Is it going to be something that absolutely has to be in the office because maybe they have mail that they receive every day or something to that effect. Other times they may say, yeah, I'm just open to anywhere, because we need the talent, and Omaha may not have that kind of talent that's easily findable. There's a myriad of reasons why that may happen. A lot of times what we'll see is they want them in the office. no ifs, ands, or buts. But then we go a month out and we're like, we can't find any candidates for you. We're searching. We've got other people working on this. We've pulled out all the stops. Are you amicable to us opening this up to as a remote position? And sometimes they'll say yes. Sometimes they'll say no. Keep looking here in Omaha. So it really our recruiting. I guess our recruiting areas that we step away from are really based off of what the manager is asking for and how we can best serve. Now, when they do start asking for that, there's other ways that we can start posting for, hey, this is a remote position. A lot of people want remote jobs these days, so those tend to get scooped up pretty quick. So that can just add to a whole new type of candidate that we didn't have access to previously. So there's a lot of good that can come from that. But then there's also struggles around managing people that are remote when you're in the office is difficult at times, especially when your entire team is in the office. And then also just making sure that they're meeting all their metrics and doing what they're supposed to be doing on a daily basis can be a little hard to track too.
And sometimes, if it's business critical or just a really, highly specific position that you want to expand that, more broadly to other areas of the country as well.
Yeah. Actually, about 3 or 4 months ago, we had a position that was an IT position that for our ERP that we're rolling out. And we could not find anyone in Omaha. And we got a candidate from Dallas. And I went to the manager, like, hey, I know you're looking for Omaha, but this guy looks pretty good, and they're like, yeah, let's do an interview. And even though he hasn't been to the Omaha site, he's doing quite well. So, yeah.
Plus we have the Cornhuskers. So he needs just people in Texas right now.
Yeah. We're like, you're like the Cowboys.
All right. So I'm curious, as far as trends in HR go, kind of how is the field of HR changing, and kind of, what are you doing to adapt to that?
Yeah. So there's a few things that are ever changing in HR, and that's going to be laws. So there's laws that are changing every day, whether it's things around employee labor, whether it's things like I-9s where we have to validate that somebody has the ability to work in the United States, or maybe even things like FMLA or medical things too. So those laws, they change quite frequently, and we have to keep up with it sometimes to not only just to make sure that we're being in compliance, but also to make sure that we're not legally putting ourselves in a situation that we might harm the company or an employee accidentally. So the challenges on laws are huge, and I listen to usually a streaming meeting or a podcast once a week about laws changing, and especially in California where the laws are very, very friendly towards the employees rather than the employer. So there's a lot to keep up on there. More recently, we do have some FLSA laws changing. So there's things around if someone can be exempt or non-exempt, salaried or hourly, and allowing them to stay salaried if they're not making a certain amount of money threshold. So that's just recently changed. So we're, every organization, not just ours, are looking at our current FLSA requirements and where we have people aligned, and if it's going to continue to align once this law passes or comes into effect. So that's something that's, you ask any organization right now, they'll talk that they're going through that process of reviewing and making sure that everyone is aligned the way that they should be.
Nice. Favorite MCU movie?
MCU movie. I know it's a trope, but Thor Ragnarok. I really like that one.
Okay. There's a lot of people that bagged on that one.
Really?
I didn't mind it. It was funny, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're a comic.
Yeah. It was probably the most funny one that there was, in my opinion, at least. But I mean, there's when you look at the whole thing holistically, it's like, yeah, okay, these all go well together, but like this one like really stood out. The first two Thor movies were not so great in my opinion. So it was when they actually took the initiative, got Taika Waititi in there and made it its own thing. It felt like it was expanding beyond the universe itself.
What's something about HR that a lot of people don't know, but they should?
We're not scary. A lot of people feel like if you're getting a call from HR, then you're out the door. And I have to really help people understand sometimes that our job is to help you. We don't want to be the one that's seemed as scary, but we oftentimes have to deliver some news that's not very favorable, or, people come to us when there's problems and not always a whole lot of, hey, here's some good news. So, but a lot of the times when I call up people, it's just to say, hey, I noticed that your paycheck was about to be 40 hours less and we fixed it. Just want to let you know in case something doesn't look right. And then they're like, oh, cool. Thank you. And not that like you're doing a terrible job, that kind of thing. It happens a lot the first thing I do when I talk to people that I've never met before is like, hey, it's Dan from HR. I'm not here to fire you. I just want to talk about something and just kind of set that, set that tone where it's just like, okay, we're not here to be a scary thing. We're here to be helpful. We, if you do have an HR person in your organization that is that kind of scary, frightful person, they might not be the right one in the role.
Talked about, somebody coming in and saying, I'm not sure that I'm right for this role, or I'm not sure that I'm right for this organization. Like how does both the company find that out, and that person in a way where everyone wins, and conversely, like how do you find the right people for the right spots,
Yeah. So I think there's two parts to that. So initially it's the hiring and recruiting is the first part. That's why we do our phone screens. We do our interviews, sometimes 2 interviews, make sure that we're kind of vetting these people with references and things like that. So we can do the best that we can to make sure that we are hiring people that are the right fit for the organization. And then secondly, if we do find that we do have somebody in the organization that maybe has become disinterested or, something has changed and they're not very happy about that change, and managers really need to be in tune with their team and have one-on-one conversations, talk about their career path. And if it seems like this person isn't really going down the same way that we thought they were, or is interested in something different, then that conversation may need to happen. Asking, sometimes, what are you looking for in your career? Is this where you want to be? We never want to scoot anyone out the door prematurely. But sometimes asking the right questions can help people realize, okay, yeah, maybe this isn't the right role for me. And there's all sorts of things that you can do to, at that point to reset. So sometimes it's okay, if this isn't the right role, where is it? If this isn't the right organization, what are you looking for? And I've had conversations with former employees that, their ultimate goal in life isn't to produce a widget. Their ultimate goal in life is to, become a doctor. And this is just a step on making enough money to do that. So you never want to
assume or
keep people where they are just because they may be good at it or it's comfortable. I always encourage everyone to follow what they really want to do. And if that may be outside the organization, sometimes it is, then at least that you had that employee that was doing a good job, and you can go back and tell other people that's the kind of organization that we are. We don't want to stifle people to do what they love. We want to help them.
So I have this question. It's kind of, I feel like it fits with what we're talking about. So like from your perspective, what types of individuals thrive in global mobility roles? And how are they best equipped to meet the needs of clients? Because, we have IT and we have marketing, and communications and stuff like that, HR. But, for those people who we hire to interface with, clients or interface with the transferring employees, we look for certain qualities. And so if you're if I'm a global mobility manager, I want to know that, the people I'm hiring to manage these relocations are excellent with,
Sure.
with those groups. So how does that factor in your recruiting for our roles here?
Yeah. So I would say that first and foremost, just has the want to do a really good job. We, as an organization, we are handling people's lives here. And I grew up in a military family. We moved around a lot. No one really took care of us. We were just saying, okay, now you're moving from Omaha to Cheyenne, Wyoming, which not my favorite place to live. I had to pick up my life, go meet new friends and do all that stuff as a kid. And that really, it's really tough, as a young person. I was talking to my brother a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I think we counted it out. We went to 9 different schools when we were kids. And my wife's like, I went to school with the same people my entire life. And so it's I don't know what that's like. So, but that being said, that's the type of people that you have to know that you're dealing with, and know that it's not just a person on a paper. You can't just disconnect yourself from them. You have to have that excellent customer service, because if not, then they're going to have a really bad experience, and they're going to potentially no longer use our services if you're not careful and not very detail oriented, and not really making sure that these people are receiving the best service that they can get. And not to mention that their companies are paying for it too. So even if we're giving good service, but we have really slow SLAs, or we're not meeting all of the expectations that they're asking us to do, they're going to pull out and go for someone else. So we need people that are detail oriented, get the fact that we're affecting people's lives, and that they want to do a good job. And I think those are probably the 3 biggest things, throughout even the organization, not just those global mobility roles, that we need to understand that we're doing. And that, I think that goes into the NEI way as well. And making sure that there's no stone unturned for our clients, because there's other industries out there where people will go from one client to the next, whoever's giving them the best offer. We can't afford to have that type of thing happen.
So what does it mean for companies when they're hiring a very sort of business critical position, something that is just it's not an easy position to come by, to have that spot just remain unfilled? What's the cost to the organization if that you can't get that filled?
Yeah, that's a very interesting position to be in, because you don't want to hire somebody that is not going to fill that role and potentially be in that role for a while. So it's the cost is really on manpower. So most likely other people are going to have to pick up the slack. They're going to have to spread out the entirety of that role.
What are they putting down?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's especially if you have a senior leader now having to do that. They were really crucial to that role, and then reporting maybe up to Janelle or Michelle or Randy. Now they're the ones that may have to be doing that, which means that that's an even higher cost, and their time is much more hard to come by because of all the other things that they have going on too. So there's definitely, I couldn't give you a specific number or anything like that, but that's the type of thing that you really need to think about, and maybe even potential loss of customers if things get dropped.
People who sit in those seats, they're paid to make decisions. Right. And there's a reason that, maybe the people who have supported them are not in those seats, right? Mm-hmm. There maybe just haven't been there that long, right? Maybe it takes 30 years of experience to be able to know, making this decision will save you $30 million. Making this decision will cost you $30 million, right? So it can be hard to quantify, because it gets down to the industry. What kind of industry are you in, and then, who knows what decisions, if made one way, could have resulted in, profit for the company, and because they were made another way, either resulted in not the same amount of profit or even a loss, right? And how do you quantify that? the only people who know are the people you're trying to hire.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Or, in a very, maybe not as often situation, you might be able to find somebody that is ready to pop up and is like, okay, I can take over that role. Sometimes you find people like, hey, I need you to just take over this aspect of this role for a little bit. And then you find actually this person might be a pretty good fit for this role. They seem to be having the characteristics in the skill set that I didn't realize they had. So that happens sometimes too, but you're absolutely right. There's I would say almost ineffable sometimes on the amount of money that it would take to ensure that you're saving the company that amount of money. But it's interesting because I think that in those high level positions, it's not only the recruiting from the HR team, but you may want to look at other additional recruiting outside of that, because there's specific like C-level recruiters or tech recruiters that can really be helpful in that aspect. And that's sometimes the decision that you need to make too. Is it more cost effective for us to try to sit around and find the right person for the next 6 months, or do we hire someone else to go find that person for us and maybe potentially save us some money in the long run?
It kind of just depends on the role.
Yeah.
I mean, if the role is making those huge decisions that cost millions and millions of dollars, I mean, it very well could be the cheapest way is to just go pay a headhunter.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt, for sure.
This competence costs money. The reason I bring that up is because, that is one of the biggest things when you're trying to talk about ROI and relocation. Mm-hmm. How do you prove that, this is a good decision going with a relocation agency? It's like, well, a lot of these people that you're hiring into these C-suite positions are very, skilled positions like nuclear engineer and all this stuff. These people have options. They have plenty of employment options. And if they don't get a good area orientation, or, the real estate agent they got was not that great, didn't vet the property correctly, and something goes wrong, you don't want to have a bad experience with somebody who you're paying a lot, to bring there. And so if you have a failed move, not only do you have to refill that role, but again, who knows what decisions are being made and what decisions, are costing your company if that goes wrong, Exactly. And so it's like, how do you quantify that? Well, it can be inexact, but it doesn't mean that there's no cost.
Yeah. And not only everything that you said, but also the time that it takes to move in general and do that research, whether or not it's being provided for them. Imagine if there was just like, okay, I'm hiring for you for this role. You have to move across the country, figure it out on yourself, but also do your actual job. Like if you're, like you mentioned, like a nuclear engineer or a CEO or something like that, you're probably involved with things most of the day. And I'm not talking most of the work hour, most of the day. And then also you have to go research a place to live and a new potential school system for kids and a job for your spouse and all that stuff. That's overwhelming.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Even if you aren't a C-level person, just in general, it's tough.
Yeah. It's overwhelming for everyone, but for somebody with that amount of responsibility, it just quickly becomes ridiculous.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching or listening to another episode of Relocation Leader. Once again, I'm your host, Zac Turbes. We have Dan Vaughn. Thanks for coming by, Dan.
Sure.
And we encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn and make sure you share our stuff. Thanks.